year's class speaker in his first term reflection essay, something that a lot of people in this room know a lot about. The books that I've read don't seem so strange to the people around me. In high school, if you read James Joyce recreationally, that meant you were on an entirely different plane. Here, the conversation does not end with, "Oh, you read." Rather, it begins with, "What do you read?" It's almost as if we've all had... Sorry, can you hear me now? All right, I'm starting over again. Suddenly, wrote this year's class speaker in his first term reflection essay. The books that I've read don't seem so strange to the people around me. In high school, if you read James Joyce recreationally, that meant you were on an entirely different plane. Here, the conversation does not end with, "Oh, you read." It begins with, "What do you read?" It's almost as if we all had the Bennington consciousness in us our whole lives.
Yeah.
If you ask Bryan Conover what he reads, you'll need a little bit of time for his answer. During his time at Bennington, he has literally exhausted the Shakespeare curriculum, which takes some doing, and through coursework has studied the likes of Dante, Plato, Melville, Joyce, and Proust, the latter of whom is the subject of 6 analytic essays that constitute his senior thesis in literature.
Woo! Bryan!
An even better question for Bryan might be, why do you read? To Bryan, reading is not only a means of consuming art, but an art in itself. And in that regard, as our literature faculty will tell you, Bryan is an artist.
Yes, he
Teachers
is.
know better than anyone that reading is an often overlooked skill. While many can do it, few actually work at it, appreciating how fruitful it can be when done superbly. Bryan is one of those few. My goal has been to advance my level of reading to where I can take pride in the sensitivity I have to a text. He writes in his final plan essay, "I don't imagine that there will be a specific moment when I feel that I've accomplished this, but if I continue to work with this goal in mind, I think that I'll graduate with a sense that my time here was wisely spent."
Yeah.
If Bryan's capacity to put words to a page is any evidence of his capacity to take in a text, and I would argue it is, it would be hard to say that his time here wasn't wisely spent. In the words of one of his teachers last fall, reading Bryan's striking, original, beautifully cadenced essays is one of my great pleasures this term. So let me be the first to say to Bryan and to all of our graduates that I hope the Bennington consciousness remains with you, and congratulations on your years here, wisely spent. Please join me in welcoming Bryan.
I'd like to start with a quote from Marcel Proust's novel In Search of a Lost Time. The passage I'll read is taken from the start of the 6th volume. At the time, the narrator is in love with a woman named Albertine. His love is fueled by a painful jealousy, which inspires him to bring Albertine to Paris and have her live with him. In their time together, the narrator comes to believe that, despite his jealousy, he must separate from Albertine in order to fulfill his potential as an author. And he imagines different schemes that would allow him to do so. Despite his plans, Albertine leaves unexpectedly and of her own accord. The narrator's response is as follows. Mademoiselle Albertine is gone. How much further does anguish penetrate in psychology than psychology itself? A moment before, in the process of analyzing myself, I had believed that this separation was precisely what I had wished. And I had felt that I was being subtle, had concluded that I no longer wished to see her, that I no longer loved her. But now these words, Mademoiselle Albertine is gone, produced in my heart an anguish that I felt I could not endure it much longer. So what I had believed to be nothing to me was simply my entire life. How ignorant one is of oneself. We've been told since we were freshmen that the experience of going to Bennington College will be as productive as we make it. The classes we have chosen, the reflection papers we've written, and the plan meetings we've sat through all attest to the control we have had over our own academic endeavors. In the past 4 years, I've tried to use the opportunities available to direct my life in accordance with my aspirations. The future has been and continues to be a source of anxiety. An interesting thing happened in my senior year. I began to feel like I remember feeling my freshman year. This campus and the people on it seemed strange and monumental again. 4 years can be a long time. I'd like to think I understand the significance of my time here, but I know that's impossible. I'm wary of the Proustian revelation where in something's absence I am to realize what I had believed to be nothing to me was simply my entire life. Bennington has changed for each of us as we have changed, and when anything comes to its close, it can be easy to overlook the value of what is being left or what is leaving. Graduation challenges us to assess our time at Bennington without the comfort of being here. The habits that have allowed us to live and work at this school will be tested elsewhere. It'll be hard for me to measure the worth of my Bennington education. I generally find it difficult to determine the precise significance of my experiences, and I often struggle with arranging my memories according to logical value. Time that has passed exists differently in my mind than what it corresponds to, and the complexity of each moment lived prevents me from seeing it clearly. I know I have grown intellectually in the past 4 years, but questions regarding the purpose and value of this time are not easy to answer. As a freshman, I had difficulty at Bennington. In an essay from his Adventurer series, Samuel Johnson writes, "It is difficult to imagine with what obstinacy truths which one mind perceives almost by intuition will be rejected by another, and how many artifices must be practiced to procure admission for the most evident propositions into understanding." He's referring to the necessity for communication. Ideas are not useful unless they can be shared. Freshman year, I had trouble expressing my ideas in class conversations. I was intimidated by the intellectual culture at this school and leaned on my written work for my contribution. In terms of literature, to become a better speaker, I had to become a better reader. When someone shares his thoughts in the text, he allows his reading of the text to be challenged. I had to become more confident in my interpretations so that I could learn how to defend them. The way to do this was to become a more demanding reader. The literature faculty helped me come to see reading as an art in itself. I've had the pleasure of reading beautiful things under the guidance of intelligent and generous people. My professors demanded that reading be more than academic work or pleasure. It needed to be personal. We have to read literature as if we were reading ourselves. I believe this idea translates into other art forms and disciplines. If what we create is to be authentic or what we think is to be true, it has to be rooted in what is personal. History is of course important, and I have been able to explore it here, but it should not overshadow what we have lived ourselves. The merit of intellectual or artistic work is not dependent on its placement within a movement or school of thought. Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, which is widely considered to be the first English novel, was published in 1719. In 1759, Lawrence Sterne published Tristram Shandy, a novel more similar in its composition to the modern and postmodern novels that arrived hundreds of years later than to those of its own time. Only 40 years separated the origin of the English novel from the revelation of its foreseeable limits. Tens of thousands of years separate the work of Pablo Picasso from that of the cave painters, but we can still see remarkable similarities between them. Artistic merit is not measured according to a work's similarities with others, but to a work's specific beauty. When I read, I connect literature to memory. The struggle to find meaning in a novel is not that different from the struggle to find meaning in the past. There's no universal means of interpreting experience. It is always relative to the individual. Each individual is continuously abstracted from past experiences by the gradations of time. When I try to determine the significance of an event in my life, I inevitably attempt to pin it down with logic, and my conclusion, if I arrive at one, often seems hollow. I've had similar experiences trying to understand the actions of others. If nothing else, the various ways we behave and the myriad ways that others see them suggest that we live without a perceivable guide to help us. But what I have learned in my time here has led me to believe that the lack of distinguishable reasons for an action to occur does not invalidate what is sensed or felt of the action. Obscurity cannot always be avoided. I think that just as art is rooted in the personal, so is desire, motivation, and even morality. Moral obligations, though often unexplainable, can be felt in the heart. If we were not able to feel them, we would not care that they are problematic. The desire to fulfill our perceived obligations is similar to the desire to make a work of art. They both seek a form of self-definition, one through relationships, the other through representation. Either way of defining oneself is tied to the individual's past. The events that impact us never truly end, they merely become imperceptible to us by altering our direction and distorting the past. There's a truth in poignant memories that speaks more to who people are than intellectual truths can. The truth attainable through memory is connected to the imprints that have been made upon us, and is therefore something of immense personal value. I know I'm not alone in feeling that I'll be leaving part of myself behind when I leave Bennington, but I also feel that we will be able to understand our time here differently, even more comprehensively once we are gone. Returning to Proust, I do not think we will have a shocking revelation of Bennington's importance upon our departure. Proust's narrator has suddenly been abandoned by the woman he loves. He loses the only person capable of comforting him, and the pleasure she enjoyed with her. As we leave school, we leave a structure that brought us closer to what we do not know. We've all completed a liberal arts education, but more importantly, we've all had to read what is only understandable to each of us, what is inside our hearts. The pleasures of this experience are alien to the temporal fixity of erotic pleasures. I like to think that the last thought of the narrator, how ignorant one is of oneself, is the first thought in the Bennington education. Our perception of Bennington will surely heighten in absence. If we have used our time productively, the loss we will feel will be outweighed by the sense of what remains. We have lived and worked with beautiful ideas that we will carry with us. Towards the end of In Search of Lost Time, the narrator says, "The only true paradises are the ones we have lost." I think this is a better representation of the transition we will go through. Our departure from Bennington will allow our memories to breathe new life in the time we spent here. While we are leaving the school, we will never be able to separate ourselves from its influence or ignore the life it will have in our minds. Thank you.